Welcome, everybody, to the Sapien podcast. We're back again, and we have a very special guy. Mr. Brent Pella is on today.
What's going on, dude?
Brent, let me introduce you because a lot of people know you, a lot of people don't know you. Brent is a comedian. He's awesome because he does a lot of different things all by himself, and I want to get into that. Brent is on a stand-up tour. You can catch him all over the country. He's always posting his shows. He's also a regular on Nick Cannon's Wild 'N Out, which is amazing. And if you haven't seen it, he's like one of the funniest guys on there.
Thank you, bro.
He has an awesome podcast called the Brent Pella podcast.
Now Good Trip.
Oh, Good Trip.
Good
So
Trip.
you fully...
Yeah,
and so
full rebrand.
Full rebrand of his podcast, and there's an awesome series that's all about psychedelics, and we'll get into that today. And most importantly, his comedy special's coming out January 11th.
Yeah.
We're very excited.
Yeah.
So without further ado, Brent, thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me, man. It's
Thank
always
you.
good to see you in your scrubs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is my uniform.
Nice. I love it. This
Every
is
day.
mine.
Yes, Andrew Huberman, everyone. If you don't know who Andrew is, he's an amazing scientist, a PhD that promotes sort of anti-aging medicine and is just a wealth of knowledge.
He's great. This shirt, for anybody who's just listening, is a graphic tee, like straight out of the 90s. But it was gifted to me. So it was a gift. And now I wear it unironically, honestly, because I love him.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy and an inspiration. And I listen to his podcast to get new information all the time. So let's get into it, Brent. Like, I'm going to do a little intro of why I really wanted you on. The concept of this season is connecting the mind, body, spirit. Like, to me, what's missing in healthcare is spirituality. And in a really funny way, you talk about spirituality. You shed light on, in a funny way, you know, like you make jokes about it and sort of, you have a bunch of characters, right? Like the spiritual guru. And I think it's really funny because when you shed light on something like that, when you make it a joke, you're actually bringing truth into focus, right? And to me, that is spirituality. When you take truth and humor, you allow the spirit to come through. Like, comedy to me has been such a powerful force, especially over the last few years as things got really weird. Censorship got overwhelming, something that I don't think in our lifetime we ever thought we would experience so much of that. And it's really in the comedy space that you actually hear the truth. You know, through the jokes, you could kind of smooth out the unpleasantness.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, is that comedy to you? What is comedy to you? Because it's so special. It's not just a clown or a court jester like so many people think. It's a much deeper communication that we share amongst each other.
Sure. You talk about wanting to bring spirituality into medicine, and I want to bring. I would hope that what I do whenever I make a quasi-spiritual video or something, I'm bringing spirituality into somebody's awareness field, right? I think humanity just needs more spirituality. You know, especially in these days when you can pick any topic and find like a million people who hate you for your opinion, no matter what your opinion is. It's wild. And I think it speaks to a lack of self-awareness because we've been kind of conditioned and chipped down by this mainstream way of thinking. We're oversaturated with advertisements and commercialization and commodification of fucking everything, to the point where you're either being told to buy something or to like hate someone.
To believe
in the news.
Believe something so vehemently that anyone who disagrees with you is an awful person.
Exactly. And so that to me just reflects a total lack of self-awareness that has become like a trope of modern society. So how comedy fits into that, for me is really like I think a lot about the archetype of the court jester. You know, this way of thinking can be pulled from that archetype of the jester. Just always viewing life in its absurdity and calling it out for its absurdity, and allowing yourself to move through that absurdity with a smile and a laugh. A specific example of that is like, a political post or some big political issue, and you see everybody just fighting and arguing about it online, be the jester and laugh at that. You don't need to buy in. As much as a couple of those comments might make you mad, you don't need to buy into that. You can laugh your way through it because you know that those people are absurd. Those are the people eating Tyson chicken nuggets at 4 a.m. on the floor of their, basement. So comedy adds it helps mental health to me. It above anything else.
There's so much anger, right? Like whenever any of these divisive, not even divisive, right? Like we talk a lot about, how to eat, right? Avoiding processed foods, a more animal-based diet. And then people get mad. They get angry. They take it personally. And you make fun of it. And by making fun of it, I think it just takes the edge off. And I think we have to laugh at ourselves or else everything becomes so serious. And everything is serious. Like, actually, all the topics you're bringing up in your jokes and in your skits, they're very serious. They're very real.
Dude, yeah. I'll give you 2 examples. So I'll give you a political example and then more of like a spiritual psychedelic example. So of 2 pieces of content that I saw had an impact on 2 different people. So there was a guy who, some random dude DM'd me in like 2021, hating on me for putting out what he called like far right wing videos. At the time, I was doing a lot of Gavin Newsom impressions, and Gavin Newsom, California governor, he's one of the very few people who, when I impersonate him, it's not with a certain level of respect. But
and it's really good.
Political, and I would do that to anybody. I would do that to any politician. They don't really get.
And you nail it. You nail it.
Yeah, when I do an impression of like Paul Saladino, our Lord and Savior, it's with love and respect and appreciation for his work. Totally. But when it's a politician, that's not really there. So that's more just calling out the absurdity, right? So anyways, this person DM'd me and said he was going to unfollow me because I was posting all this crazy stuff and he couldn't believe it and da-da-da-da, and how far I had strewn and da-da. And I like double tapped his DM and I liked it, right? And then 2 years later, in like late 2022, I got a DM from the same guy.
He's still following you.
No, he said, bro, he apologized for like talking trash and unfollowing me, and he said he had a whole like change of perspective. He used to be super far left. Now he's much more like in the middle, and he sees things a different way, in large part due to some of my videos, which I was like really humbled by. That is so cool. And so I would hope that if that happened to one person who told me, maybe that it's happened to 10, and maybe each of those people have helped other people kind of realize, you don't need to plant your flag in cement on one side of an issue or on one side of a spectrum, whether it's politics or culture wars or views toward any trending issue that has a spectrum. You don't need to plant your flag in cement. You can be malleable, right? So that was one example. Another example, I did a video where I did an impression of Aaron Rodgers, again, with love. And in the video, I, as Aaron Rodgers, was working out on a football field, but instead of drinking Gatorade, I was drinking bottles of ayahuasca, right?
Yeah.
And it got really popular. It was super fun. Aaron loved it, which was so cool. Good. And I got a message from a buddy I've known for a while, and he was kind of like, incredulous. He was like, "What, you really do you do that? Is that like a thing? Like what? I've always heard that's like insane. Like, have you actually done that before?" And I was like, yeah, I sat in ceremony like about a month ago. It was a very intense and amazing experience. And I like gently soft pitched him the idea that he should look into it more. Mm-hmm. And so he did. And now he's like, I don't know if he sat in ceremony yet, but like it opened his door of awareness to seek out new information about this topic he never knew about. And it happens to be a topic, ayahuasca and psychedelics, that has a very strong ability to change your mind and change your, humanity for the better. So I say both of those examples because comedy, first and foremost, is meant to make people laugh. Above anything, is to bring joy. Above anything. But secondly, I love to use it as a fun little tool to kind of, throw some info into somebody's brain that they might not have thought about before and like change the way that they think about a certain topic or a certain issue. And that's what has been really fun for me in regards to comedy about psychedelics or politics or trending issues. And that is really the epitome of the court jester model, is to flip the mirror on people and give them a new perspective toward, topics that they might have held a lot of habitual thinking about.
Right. And being a doctor during COVID was so heavy. It was so hard because I took certain positions that really went against the grain. And now it goes right with the grain. Now more and more and more people, just like these young people.
The grain has changed, dude.
Yeah. People open up, over time, you can only kind of be stuck in one way of thinking for so long, and eventually information starts seeping in. And I think, like, for me, as someone who was always just so deep in it, comedy was my escape.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I was ever such a fan of comedy. I mean, I think everyone was fans of, like, the greats, right? And just listening to them. And I never really processed why is it so important for our culture. And going through, very difficult time for myself as a person, right? Because when you're a doctor, you have a certain role. You take certain positions. I hope more doctors would take stronger positions and not just follow the masses and just follow with the recommendations, but just use their brain and use their own individual, because everyone needs a different kind of doctor, right? There's so many people and everyone needs a different guide in this world. I needed a guide. Like, I needed to know that I wasn't crazy and that all these people that I was learning from, I learned from scientists, many PhDs, authors. That's how I gain my information. But to see the comedy community embrace, and it's not just you, it was the community, I always, and I've said this before on the podcast, like, during COVID, it was Joe Rogan, a comedian's podcast. That is where I first got introduced to Peter McCullough and Robert Malone and all of these amazing doctors that were standing up and saying, there's different ways to look at this thing.
Yeah.
There's more to it than what's being sold to you on corporate media, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to this issue. And just like food or exercise or psychedelics and mental health, there's so many angles, and to really provide, like, meaningful care en masse to lots of people, which is always my goal. I'm never trying to just target one community. You've got to look at different. And so how interesting that it was the comedian, a guy who constantly says, how am I in this role? Like, if you don't like Joe Rogan, fine, but he is a cultural force. He's a powerhouse. And through him and through his platform, I've helped thousands of people through COVID, through psychedelics, just learning about different angles to think about things. And, like, it's a comedian. It's a jokester.
Yep.
Someone who doesn't take himself seriously. And then when I watched you during COVID, create your own version of SNL, that was the funniest thing. And if you guys haven't listened to it, please go on Brent's channel. It really is, it's gold. And it's something that I think people will go back to and look at and be like, wow, that's something that Brent was doing in a time that was very, very difficult. And you did it yourself. How powerful. Like, I carry a lot of responsibility. Like, I feel the weight of that responsibility. And that's one of my motivations to have these talks. Do you feel like you have a responsibility as your platform grows, as, like, the tension grows, to actually be an educator and an influencer, not a social media influencer, but an influencer of thought?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I have a responsibility that I put on myself to put as much joy into the world as I possibly can. That's the responsibility I feel like in my soul, like in my cells. As far as the responsibility of to educate, that's more like fun for me. So that kind of comes second to just purely trying to make people laugh and give them, like, a moment of happiness. But the responsibility to educate, I feel like maybe it's less of a responsibility and more just like an inclination. And I get a lot of fulfillment when I can put out a video that, like, has people thinking in a different way, right? Like, today I just put out a clip from a video that I shot not too long ago called Christmas Looting in California.
Oh man.
Because like the looting has not stopped in 3 years, right? And I see a lot of people like downplaying it online and da-da-da-da-da. And so I found like 10 headlines and I screenshotted them and put them in the video. There wasn't even enough space in the frame of the video, so I had to go down to 3. But so that to me is like, okay, the concept is funny first and foremost. And secondly, it's a little bit like, hey, this is actually happening. So like, look at this. It's wild. But the responsibility for joy, to put joy into the world, stems from a theory. I'll share the theory with you. Right. So we'll start here. You know how I want to get your reflection on this. The body has the ability to physically store trauma. Yes?
Yes, and on a cellular level.
On a cellular level. So,
very much
talk to me about that for a second. And it's in my limited amount of research and self-proclaimed medical professionalism, which is 0 out of 10. I
would disagree with that.
Thank you so much. I see the body storing trauma as you carry this emotional weight that's reflected in the ability to experience stress more often than if you weren't carrying the trauma, the ability to be triggered by an event or an interaction that reminds you of the trauma that leads to an increase in stress, messes with your cortisol levels, that causes inflammation, antisocial ways of life. And inflammation is just a breeding ground for all types of disease. So what is your reflection on the body's ability to physically store trauma?
Yeah, I think as a healer, as someone who is interacting with thousands of people, it's an obvious reality. When I decided to do this season, I entered it with the idea that there is an energetic field in the world that people call God, people call vibes, people have many, many different names for it. And religion has always been the place where we talk about that. We talk about, the power of healing, through prayer and all these things. And what I'm trying to say is that it exists in religion and it should exist in the world of medicine. And I think psychedelic medicine is a path to introducing the idea that vibrations, energetic fields, chi, all of these words, that's a way to show people that it's a very palatable, real thing. We don't have a way to measure it. Maybe we do, and we don't know about it. Maybe I don't know about it, and maybe that's what I'm exploring here, through somatic therapy and through talk therapy and through psychedelic therapy and through comedy. I think that there's an energetic field that we're sharing right now. And then there's an energetic field that is sort of in the whole world that transcends time and space. And I think that it is a very real thing. And it is ignored, completely ignored. And it's because medicine is only interested in treating disease. And disease must be measured and must have to have a blood marker for it or a scan for it. And then I can give you a diagnosis code for it. And then I could prescribe you something for it. And I think that whole model completely locks you into a way of thinking that's super, super limited.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very, very obvious that our health is driven by our mood. It's driven by how we look and talk with each other. It's driven by the content and the interactions. It's the interactions we have, but in today's modern age, it's also the content you're sort of ingesting through your phone and through media. And so there's lots of interesting evidence, that energy can be passed and stored and bleeds through our skin. Listening to a podcast about that literally it bleeds through our skin. So I think that's really the goal. The goal is to explain to people or open people's mind to the fact that your health is not just driven by the food and your exercise habits, but by the way you choose to interact with people. I'm not a fan of masking, and that upsets people. And look, the data for masking is really bad as far as it protects you from things. I don't really think it does, and the evidence is overwhelming. There's a recent study that was just published with children that showed that the masking mandates did very little to limit transition of disease, but it did a lot to affect like language development.
So that would be,
skills.
I would consider that a form of trauma, is
Yes.
what a lot of kids went through and young people went through during COVID was traumatic. It was traumatic. You know, being separated from your friends and family, not getting the experiences that you typically would have gotten, whether it was prom or sports or college or freshman year, whatever, all of that, and being separated and removed and forcibly told, no, you cannot connect with other human. That's a traumatic experience for a young person. So
that they'll carry with them now.
Right. That and I think that is stored somehow in the cell, and that's what I'm trying to do more research on. Right. So if that's true, here's the theory. If you can physically store trauma in your body, then wouldn't the reverse have to be true, where you do have the ability to physically store joy on a cellular level, right? Because if you go down to the atomic scale and you're thinking about it in terms of quantum physics, there's no such thing as solid matter. There's no such thing.
Everything's a vibration.
It's an illusion. All of this is just energy interacting with energy and giving you the illusion that matter is touching matter, right? Everything is a vibration. There's space between everything. So if that's true, then when you're vibrating low because of trauma, and there is a measurable scale, and the lowest level on that scale is shame, and the highest level, I think, is love. I think
it's love.
It's love. I forget. I was just looking at it the other day. It was like shame, and then right under that is
what is
right
it for
above
you?
that is
There's
like,
I don't think there's a rule. You know, there's no rules here.
well, no, but there is a measurable scale, right? So you can measure these different emotions in people and see the actual frequencies that are emanating from the person. And if you're not into that, it's fine, but you should be, because it's real. So that's the theory. If you can store joy in your body, then the theory is that that joy stored at a cellular level is doing the opposite of what the trauma was doing. What the trauma was doing was creating a toxic inner environment for things like disease to be fostered. And if you're storing joy on a cellular level, then you don't have an environment for disease. It's not like the more you laugh, the stronger you're going to get, or the hotter
maybe
you're
resilient.
But yeah, you become resilient. It's just you're healthier. That's how you store joy. Is you have healthier, stronger cells that are way more resilient and resistant to things like disease. That's the theory.
I think that like the concept of resiliency is a good way to think about it, because when you are constantly in a sad state and when your cells are constantly in this low vibrational frequency of sadness and shame and fear, it makes you more susceptible to mental health problems, to physical health problems.
Right. Yeah.
And then I start asking the question, like, if we have a disease-centered model of healthcare, and if you believe sort of what I believe, that the idea for corporations is to promote disease because you make money on disease. Drug companies, food companies, they're in cahoots. Again, this is my tinfoil hat theory.
It's not that big of a hat anymore.
People are
it's more like a tinfoil,
it's
yarmulke now or something.
It's something. I think listeners of this podcast will probably be more on that page. But just in general, like, I think that when you see so much toxicity in the news, it does promote disease, and it does like make people less resilient to real traumas, right? If everything that you're seeing and everything you're exposed to is negative, fear-based sadness, then when a virus comes through and it's the winter season, you're less able to battle that. Your immune system is compromised, your nervous system is compromised, your hormone system is compromised. The mitochondria in your cells are less quality and less able to sort of make energy and protect you. Your immune cells aren't firing in all cylinders. Your nervous system is on the fritz and you can't manage your emotions. Like, yeah, it's all connected. And
whereas if you live in a state of joy, or you try to operate in a state of joy, every single thing you just said is the exact opposite. And so that is what drives everything I do, is trying to add to that a little bit, because you live in a state of joy by doing a million different things. You go for a walk outside, you eat healthy food, you have a community, you have friends you hang out with, you journal, whatever. And you laugh. So that's where I try to inject what I can into somebody's joy experience.
Comedy is medicine, right?
Yeah.
personal story. So more recently, I've gone through some heavy stuff and whatever, health stuff, personal stuff, business stuff. It all kind of added up. It was no single thing that was devastating, thank God, but I've had a lot of little things add up. And I've always leaned on exercise. I've always had the diet thing has always been my anchor point. So physically, I'm in good shape because of that. But, you know, exercise will only take you so far. I honestly believe that. I think exercise is critical and it releases endorphins and it's so good for you physically and mentally, but it's not enough. For me, I found that it just wasn't enough because every day when you're dealing with heavy stuff, you know, I do end of life care, I do primary care, which is mostly mental health these days. I deal with just heavy stuff all day. And I was like finding myself really, really struggling. And my wife would feel that as well because I'd come home and it's heavy, you know, and she wants to support me. And we leaned into comedy, like really leaned into it. You know, we were already huge fans of you. In fact, I found you through my wife. She was the one who,
awesome.
And shout out to Natalia. She's amazing. And she found you online and she's like, you gotta check this guy out. And, and that's, I messaged you and, you know, that was years ago and we built a relationship. And, but, you know, Tony Hinchcliffe in Austin has been, you know, I watch Kill Tony. Shout out to Kill Tony because it really is, you know, it's there's aggression to it.
Yeah.
You know, stand-up comedy is an interesting thing. It's brutal.
Yep.
It's freaking hard, man. People get demoralized. And then people break through and have these profound moments where they could like get a whole room to laugh at themselves or laugh at something. And that transcended to me as like an escape, as just a way to process my feelings. Like when someone would have a tough set, I would empathize with them. I would feel those feelings, and then I'd see someone else who's been working at it for years come out and like do something special, and then get all the love and get like an opportunity to come up in the space, and that brought so much joy, and all of these emotions started like brewing in me, and so we started going to a lot of stand-up shows, and we started watching a lot of videos, and it just became this like daily medicine. Like come home every Monday, listen to him. Instead of scrolling through my phone on a bunch of garbage, jump on your channel or jump on one of my favorite comedians' channels, see what their newest skit is or their newest special is, whatever. And it's been like a real healing modality. And that's on a spiritual level. I think that healing that's happening, and maybe when I say spiritual, it's that cellular healing, what you're saying. You know, maybe when I say spirituality, I'm actually saying those vibrations in my cells started moving on this scale towards happiness. And then when I'm going into clinic or going into a tough case, I have the ability to handle those emotions better and not let it break me down and carry it home with me. Yeah. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And I hope people will listen and open up to it and realize that there's more to it than just laughter. There's like a connection with the human being who's putting themselves in such a vulnerable position. When you put out a skit, you know, you're putting your like inside, your inner thoughts out there, and you could get eviscerated for it, as I'm sure you have with some of your stuff. But then it only takes one person to be like, man, you really helped me. Like I was struggling and you helped me feel joy. You helped me see the lighter side. And it's just so powerful. And
yeah, I mean, do I have the most important job in the world? Yes, I do. And everybody should recognize that. Just joking. But
maybe you do.
I think it's, you know, I think when it comes to the importance of comedy and laughter, it's like, you know, seek that out more often than you seek out the hit of negativity that we get fed in a slow drip on Twitter or anything else. You see a video of some crazy shit. I see murder on Twitter like every other day. I see a murder. Yeah, it's nuts. And not only do I see the murder, but like millions of people are liking that video and commenting on that video. And I think if and I'm trying to do this now too, but I think if people would consciously change their consumption habits from consuming things on the internet to consuming things in real life, that's huge. That's a whole mental shift. Like, instead of consuming today's news, I'm not saying don't watch the news, but be conscious of where you're getting your news. Be conscious of how you're interacting with your news. Be conscious that what you're seeing on the news, regardless of the source, might not be true in a week or two. And just raise your level of consciousness to that. And instead of like reading through a bunch of comments or scrolling through a bunch of videos, maybe seek out something that's going to bring you joy that you know will be fun, whether it's a comedy video, stand-up comedy clip, or a comedy show, or any of the other practices that you talk about and that I've talked about: getting sunlight, being in nature, experiencing community, getting a workout, eating a really healthy meal, cooking, reading a book, whatever. There's a million different ways to shift your consumption habits from consuming negative, low vibrational experiences into high vibrational, positive experiences.
I thought you have that skit about the vibes guy, the vibes guy. It's so funny because it really is the idea of vibration is this thing that's like poo-pooed. It's considered woo-woo. It's silly. And I always thought it's like the most real thing, because I'm very extroverted. So when I'm in a room, if someone's kind of got a crappy vibe, I can't not feel it.
Yeah.
They could just be sitting there quietly and they're emitting it. And I'm so sensitive to it that I'm just like, that is the realest thing in the room. More than all the people talking to me or whatever's going on, I literally feel someone who's emitting joy like yourself, who's constantly on you. And I know you put in work to that, to like emit this energy of happiness, of openness, of acceptance, you know. And then there's people, we all know those people that really just bring the vibe down. And that's not that word, that vibe down. That's not woo-woo.
It's not cliche.
Very
I mean,
real.
It's become cliche, but you know, think of it as real, because it is a real thing.
It is a real thing. And again, I'll just say it, and then I want to ask you some other questions. But like all this stuff, the vibes, the energy, it all used to only live in the world of religion. And spirituality and religion are not the same thing. I'm a huge proponent of religion now, because I'm watching with the death of religion since the 2000s and all of this negative correlations with religion, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Catholic Church, everyone sort of like getting negative with religion. And now that it's been a few decades, I'm seeing the outcomes, and people are hollow. They're missing something critical in their lives. Maybe another word for it is faith. You don't have to just have faith in like a book, although that's great. I think it's a great way to find spirituality. And I think we should stop being so negative towards it. We should, of course, everything can be taken to an extreme and it can get nasty. You can also find comics that say some nasty stuff and you're like, it's probably not a good thing to be sharing with people. Like, that's a bad vibe. So everything can get taken way too far.
Yeah.
But like just making people aware that like the spirit and having faith in yourself and humanity, believing in yourself, believing in people, believing in the goodness of people, like there's a huge power to it. And it can live in that religious space. It can live in the comedic space. It can also just live in you waking up in the morning, as I know you do and I do, putting your feet on the ground, opening your heart, taking some deep breaths, maybe jumping in a cold plunge or in a sauna so you can sweat and get really uncomfortable, and just opening yourself to something else out there that we just are struggling as a society to call it. We are stuck in old ways of thinking, and as life gets more and more tricky and there's more and more information, we need to lean into it, whether it be religion, faith, spirituality, vibes, whatever. We need to lean back into it to find ourselves, or we're going to continue to see looting and horrible stuff on the internet. Like Twitter or X, it is a product of the people. I love Elon Musk for just creating a platform for everyone to do whatever they want, because free speech is the most important thing that America brings to this world, I think. And it can come with negativity.
Yeah.
And if you have a world full of negativity, then the most of the videos are nasty videos. But if we start thinking about faith in a more meaningful way, we can start changing that. And that is why I'm here. That's why you're here. Okay, I want to talk about you some more.
Great.
There's two things, but the first is like, there seems to be a new model of comedy and really entertainers. It's probably true in music as well, that, getting that spot on the Tonight Show and then becoming, getting a TV show, like that's a wrap. I watched you create a Brent Pella universe from nothing. Like when I started following you, I think you had like 1,000, 2,000 followers. Like it was nothing. I was like, oh, this guy's cool. Yeah. And now it's a whole universe. It's you have a community of other shared comics, so much amazing content. And here's the thing. You do it yourself. I mean, I went to your apartment back in the day with all the video gear, sitting there editing it, being like, I'm going to make my own show, booking your own shows, making your own specials. And I see that happening, in the comedy space as a whole. Like, that's this new self-made model. Like, was that a conscious effort? Is that just the nature of the game now?
That's how that's kind of like been the natural evolution of things. Like in today, I can't rely on anybody else. I can't even hold out hope for somebody else to give me a shot or an opportunity. Things like doing a late night spot on Fallon. Obviously that would be a dream. I love Jimmy. But it wouldn't do for me what it did for comedians 10 plus years ago, or maybe even less, maybe 7, 8 plus years ago. You can grow your own audience. You can market to your own audience. You can create for your own audience without any help from any traditional industry platform or person, which is it's incredible, dude. It's amazing. I mean, that's how we've gotten almost all of today's huge comics that are doing great. My buddy Ryan Long has his whole thing. JP created his own universe. My good friend Nikki Howard has her own little cult, great. Yeah. So it's awesome. The pros are full creative control and longevity, because you're bringing people on yourself and you're creating personal relationships. The cons, of course, are that it's a little harder. It's just harder. It's harder. You have to create your own roadmap, and then you have to follow it, and you got to figure out what's right and wrong as you go. Whereas in the old model of being a creator, specifically within the comedy world, you could submit for things and get given opportunities, and if you delivered on those opportunities, then it's kind of like you're on a roller coaster now, and you're being taken along for the ride. You still have to obviously work and perform and create, but there's way less. There was way less responsibility. Now, all of the responsibility is on the creator when they're pushing their own universe and architecting their own universe, which is what I'm trying to do. So it's fun. It's certainly stressful, and the highs are high, the lows are low. Yeah. But there's some things that I feel like I've accomplished that I probably would not have if I were just aiming for the industry roadmap, which I was for quite a while. I had my top 10 list of things to accomplish were all industry related. Right. None of those things I could have gotten on my own. I needed the validation or the yes or the invitation from certain people, certain networks, certain shows, certain platforms in order to achieve. Now, my top 10 list looks a top 10 list of goals looks way different, and they're almost entirely things that I can do with the support of my little ecosystem that I've built and the people that I work with. But like my top 10 list of goals, they don't really include Netflix, right? Like I just pitched my comedy special to every streaming platform in town. All of them said no, which was expected. It's expected. They'd say no to everybody unless your last name is Chappelle. Right. And the new model has become for stand-up comedians to just put your stuff out on YouTube. Yeah. People bigger than me are releasing specials on YouTube. Yeah. People with Comedy Central, Netflix, Hulu credits for previous specials are now saying, fuck all that. I'm putting my special on YouTube because that's where my audience is. I want to grow my audience for myself and market to my people instead of going to the streaming networks who are going to withhold information, not give me names and locations and demographics of people. It's fucked. So when you do everything yourself, you're not only in creative control of everything, but you also have a an overview of who your audience is and where they are and how you can connect with them. And there's no middleman in between that. So that's the path I'm down now in trying to create like the universe and build it out.
I remember when I came to and this was a different time. I came in a different place you live, and we did a podcast about psychedelics. And I think this is when you were starting to really realign and starting to see this new path. Cause I was like, oh, wow, you're on what is it? The Wild and Out show. Like, how amazing is that? What's the next TV show? And you're like, well, I don't know. I might actually be going down this other path and doing my own gig. And now I watch you do it, and it's so inspirational. What it really is entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and it's not like the industry is all bad and shouldn't be worked with. Right. There's a balance there. And I can only speak to my experience. I would never like give advice to an up and coming comic because that's what I am still. So, totally. But in my experience, there's a balance between relying on the old model of the Hollywood industry and embracing the new model of independence. Because I just, I have a project that I really want to make, but I am going to need some help. But at the same time, I can be seeking out ways of bringing this project to fruition independently that are going to be maybe a little bit longer and harder to do. And maybe if I had like a little bit of industry help, it'd be quicker. But there's a balance with everything. And it's project to project with this stuff, But there didn't used to be a balance. That's the thing. Right. Is it used to just be you had to get industry help to do it. There used to not be viral crowd work, stand-up comedy clips on TikTok making people's careers within weeks, which we've now seen with many people, including some good friends of mine, which is dope. But it didn't used to be like that. So now I can take my stand-up comedy special and I can cut it into 40 clips and I can put it all on TikTok, and I might hit 1 million followers on TikTok within 3 months once this stuff starts coming out after New Year's. I have no idea.
And that's a financially viable model.
It's a financially viable model because not only are you getting ad revenue from the views, but you're getting people who are locking into your content and are jumping on board the ship for the long run. Even if it's like 5% of those people. If you get 1 million followers in a year and 5% of them are with you forever and 1% of them are like your spenders, that's your money. That's how you make a living so that you can continue producing joy to put into people's lives. So that's the circular kind of model that I'm building.
It does require you to wear many hats. You're the comedian, you're the writer, you're the editor, you're the videographer, you're the lighting and sound guy.
I meditate.
Well, and it's kind of the society, where it's going. I mean, it's the same parallel with my business, right? Is I either did what most doctors do, which is go get a corporate job, get paid your salary, take your benefits, get told what to do, get yelled at if you're not doing what you do, or be the biller and the like I wear all the hats and it's scary and it's weird and it's challenging, but that at the end of the day, the product is more authentic.
Yeah, and it's also like up to you as a creator So Kobe Bryant said something once about taking the last shot and why he would never pass the ball. It's something similar to this, but he said, I would never pass the ball. I don't care what the situation is. If the game is on the line, I'm taking the shot because if I miss, it's on me. And I would never want to put that responsibility on somebody else or feel if somebody else misses the shot, I would feel like it's my fault because I didn't shoot it. So now I am moving into a space where I'm taking all the shots, and I'm definitely missing, but I'm not like relying on someone. I'm hitting too, for sure, but I'm not relying on somebody else and hoping that they hit it, hoping that they bring something into success. So that's kind of the new model.
And it's interesting because it actually goes back. So my whole thing is ancestral health, right? Thinking about our ancestors. How did people do it before? So before, if you were a successful person, you really were a Renaissance man or woman. Mm-hmm. It was the way people were, like when we think of the great philosophers, the great scientists of the world, they produced all sorts of information and content, and they invented stuff and they wrote stuff. And that's like, you go back 100 years, that's the only way people were successful because there wasn't these corporations and there wasn't this focus on specialization. And these are parallels in like every industry, right? And I think that you are a true Renaissance man, and not just in the ways we talked about. I just, again, not to like inflate your ego, but
it's hungry. Thank you.
People are learning about you, and I brought you on because it really is an inspiration to watch you go through this process, and it drives me too. And I try to live my life this way too. But it's the comedy. You have a channel about food.
Oh yeah,
amazing. I didn't forget about it. He has an amazing channel about food, and it's fun because you're making traditional Italian cuisine.
Handmade pasta, dude.
And you're
a lot of carbs. A lot of carbs on that page.
But it's quality. It's quality food. There's something to it. The fact that you're sharing that, the fact that you spend all this time figuring out how to do this stuff, the fact that you're channeling your Italian ancestry, I'm sure it makes you feel connected. Food, cooking, food in general, the whole world of food is much deeper than just what you put in your mouth. It's a cultural thing. It's why I have 50 episodes about it, because it's much, much deeper than macros and metabolic health, blah blah blah. It's deep. It's why it's so hard to change people's minds about it, because they think like, well, this is how my culture eats, and then they forgot that that's not, there's thousands of years in human history that's tied into cooking, and really, one of my main things is we forgot about wheat fermentation, initialization of corn, and appropriate processing of dairy, and how we used to consume vegetables, and it's so deep that like you have to put out 50 podcasts for me to, I can't put it in a sentence. You have to go back and listen to episode after episode. You have to listen to Paul Saladino episode after episode to even start to understand how deep food can go. And then you also have this huge past with basketball. And I know you bring that in. And again, I'm tying this into the mind, body, spirit, right? You're not just this dude thinking of funny jokes, being in like a community and making jokes about the community. You're bringing all levels of your life, and you're sharing it with people, but I just know that about you, that, it's not one thing. You're not just a comedian. There's all these different levels. And I think to be successful in this world, as difficult as it is, with so many people, with so many corporate pressures, with so much BS, you kind of have to become that person. If you really want to find true spiritual enlightenment, another cliche term, you kind of have to lean into all of it, and you can't forget
all of it being like your true authentic self, all the pieces that make you instead of trying to be other people, right? Rick Rubin said something really cool in his book. Did you read The Creative Act?
Yeah, The Creative Act. Did I read it? I don't know if it's a book. It's a bunch of little quips,
it's meditations,
and quotes, and meditations.
Yeah, it's vignettes.
I thought it was great. It
served its purpose. 100%.
I just think Rick Rubin is a crazy inspiration of a person. Keep going, but I want to mention something about that. I just saw a clip that.
Cool.
Okay.
So he talked about the artist's dilemma as it pertains to creating for others, and I think it's a really cool thing that you can map it to even people who aren't necessarily artists, right? So what he's talked about was, artists who create for other people. If you make art for other people, is this what you were going to bring up?
Yeah, but I have a different angle.
Okay, great. If you're going to make art for other people, it's not going to land as well as if you make art for yourself. Like somebody who creates art only for themselves and are very authentic in their creation, whether it's a painting, a piece of music, a movie, whatever. If they create for themselves without anybody else in mind, people are actually going to be drawn to that because it comes from a place of authenticity. Whereas if you're making something for the masses, it's not really going to appeal to anyone fully because it didn't appeal to you in the first place. And his example was Marvel movies, right? Superhero movies made for the masses. And that's why a lot of people are getting fucking sick of them. And sure, there's people who love superhero movies and they're really cool, definitely. But like, they're not authentic art. Yeah. It doesn't leave you resonating with like a message, right? Because there isn't somebody making it for them first and foremost. It's not an artistic endeavor. It's a commodity. It's a product that you could buy in the store, except you're buying it in a movie theater. So when you list off the couple things about me, that's like all of those things inform what I do, and I try to just stay conscious of creating specifically for me and pursuing and expressing things that are authentic to me, and holding on to the faith that people will be drawn to that. And that's how I'll have a career and make friends and put something good into the world, you know?
That is actually the same quote I was going to reference.
Oh, cool.
And it made me think about sort of when I was in my early 20s and I was kind of trying to figure out myself and why I do what I do and why I get so frustrated with things, because I was a very frustrated young man and it took me a long time. And I read Ayn Rand's books, all of them. It took me a year and I read feverishly. And I connected to her concept of objectivism because, and most people see she's, you know, in our current culture, she is so disconnected because she taught you to, or she promoted this idea of behaving in a selfish way. When you do anything you do, if you do it for yourself, selfishly, to please yourself. And when it comes to art, make the art for yourself. When it comes to anything you're doing, do it true to yourself and forget about everyone else. If it pisses them off, it doesn't matter. You're selfish in your approach, and the outcome is the best for society. That is objectivism. That is what she taught. And she came from communist Russia. She immigrated to America. And in America, she found a capitalistic world where that behavior was allowing people to come up in the game. And of course, you can say that we took it too far, whatever. We're talking about philosophy. Mm-hmm. Philosophically, when I read those characters, Howard Rourke, Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, when I read those characters, and there's other characters, and if you haven't read them, please open your mind to it, because she gets a bad rep, but philosophically, it was like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find out how to live my life for myself, because I genuinely, instinctually knew that if I could be happy for myself, do the things that make me happy, cook for myself, work out the way it makes me happy, do medicine the way I think it should be done, the outcome is I help the most number of people. I do it in the most authentic way, and I do it in a way that resonates. And maybe it's not the most number of people. Maybe it's just the people that connect to me, but it resonates. It's meaningful. It gets in your brain. It gets in your heart, and it does something. And when Rick Rubin made that comment, without saying it, he makes art selfishly. He makes it for himself, and then everyone loves it, or you don't love it, and he doesn't care.
Right.
And that's the key is if you are doing it for everyone else, you're not invested, and it's not like this mind, body, spirit thing. It's just a mind thing, or it's just a body thing. Or in the case of religious people, sometimes it's just a spirit thing and they're ignoring their mind and body. They're not thinking through what it means when they make certain recommendations or when they say certain things that ostracizes people. Like everything in this world, I really believe if humans act in a selfish way, because I believe that humans are genuinely good. I don't really believe that people are nasty. I think we make people nasty, and a society that doesn't foster love is a society that creates horrible people. Yeah. But like if you have a loving society and you teach people to do things for themselves, they're going to produce the best quality stuff. Yep. Man, that really connected with me. Yeah. It's really good. So all of this also is basically, how does it connect to health? It's lifestyle medicine. Yeah. So what you talk about, what you bring to light in your comedy, and what I try to promote as a doctor is lifestyle behaviors. And like we've made a couple lists during our little rants here of like, do this, and this. Yeah. Those are all healing modalities that are lifestyle, so behaviors that affect your health. I don't know what the question is.
I've added so many. I've added so many things.
I watch you do it, I watch you, and like it's so fun. I like find Force of Nature, and then I see you cooking Force of Nature. Or like I found Siete, which is this amazing brand, and you're like cooking with it, and then like
raw milk.
I mean, just so much of this stuff.
Shilajit. Dude, I'm on board, dude. I do so many things now. I added so many things to my health routine.
How has that affected you?
It's still fairly new to have all of them at the same time, but I feel like I'm firing on different cylinders mentally. And you know, I've struggled a lot with anxiety over, especially this year. It was the roughest year for me, like in terms of growth and creativity, but it was the best year in terms of forming new relationships, building community, and having experiences that'll influence and inspire me for the rest of my life. So, you know, that's a pretty, for me, that's been a pretty heavy duality to try and balance, and adding different things to my morning routine, my daily routine, my diet, my mindfulness practices, and increasing the frequency of those things, the cadence and building a rhythm to integrating those things into my life, has started to open me up a lot more creatively, and has been like a huge help in reducing just general anxiety, tension, self-induced stresses. So I feel great. I mean, I walked in here feeling great, dude. I feel great, and
You look great.
and I think, thank you, and I think it's because of all the things that I do. Like I had like my morning smoothie used to take 5 or 6 minutes. It's a 12-minute process now because it's just like I'm adding so many little things to it, and it's exciting. Even if it's the placebo effect, I don't give a fuck. Placebo effect is real. So it's been a cool kind of test to be adding all these little things. You know, I can tell you what they are, and you can tell me
I
if
want to
you like
ask.
them or not.
Yeah, tell me the
Tell me
ones
if you
that are the most
approve.
powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me like the newest ones or the ones that you find most interesting.
Okay, cool. So here's what I've been doing lately. As soon as I wake up, straight to the cold shower. It's nice in the winter because it's freezing, and it's always painful. It's always pain. It's never not pain. After that, brush teeth. Then I'm out to the living room in front of a big glass window. I open it up. I got sun coming in. 3 days a week, I drive down to the beach and go for a walk. But I just can't do that every day. It's too much. So 3 days a week, I'm doing some grounding. Every other day, in front of my window, doing a 10 to 15 minute yoga stretch flow. Then do my affirmations. Then I'm in the kitchen, and I have about 12 to 16 ounces of water, not tap, because that'll kill you, and water mixed with this greens thing. It's kind of like Athletic Greens, but it's a different brand, and a dropper of Shilajit. And I have that, and now we're at around, 8:30 ideally, but I'm trying to push that earlier. I'm trying to become more of a morning person. It's tough with stand-up because sometimes you're out doing shows or a late shoot, whatever.
Traveling a lot.
Yeah. Then I switched my coffee routine. I used to drink coffee in a tumbler that was like a little bit bigger than this one. It was like a 32 ounce, and it was a French press, and so there was a lot of caffeine in there. And the reason I know there's a lot of caffeine is because when I switched, and now I'm drinking this coffee, one serving of this coffee is 120 milligrams of caffeine, which is still like
A lot. Yeah.
But what's crazy is I'm down to 120 milligrams of caffeine, maybe 4 times a week. And I'm like smooth energy. Whereas before I was twacked out tweaking energy. So I must have been doing like 300 plus milligrams of
French
caffeine.
press.
Yeah. And I would drink it over the course of like 4 or 5 hours. But dude, 4 years ago, I'd never drank coffee up until about 3 or 4 years ago. I'd started drinking coffee then. And so now I'm reducing my caffeine intake, and soon I'm going to switch to just off days for coffee. And then I'll switch to like 1 or 2 days a week when I'm really tired. But in the coffee is typically, it's not just coffee. It's got like adaptogens and MCT oils and a couple other things.
You don't find that and make the coffee nasty?
No, it's delicious.
Okay.
Shout out to Strong Coffee.
Strong coffee.
And Black Rifle, because those are the homies. And so I mix it up sometimes. But Strong Coffee's got this like instant scooper that's really good. And I add some chocolate salt electrolytes to it, raw milk, and butter. And I whip it up, and it's delicious. It's amazing. That's my morning drink. And I don't eat until around noon, and I have my smoothie that I put a million things in. And that's really good. But that's the typical like flow. And I'm trying to not eat 3 hours before bed, which is usually 9. So then I'm not doing solid food between 9 and 12. but I know you're supposed to not do anything if you really want to fast. So
it's hard. I mean,
tough.
what you just said is amazing. We're going to clip that out because that's
great.
it's amazing. Look, I think you've nailed so many of the lifestyle routines. The morning routine is probably one of the most important things because it actually sets you up to help sleep at night. And if I'm going to be honest, I am so overworked right now that all of this stuff has fallen off. It's really, really hard. I'm going to say that because I want people to understand, like, that's amazing.
Dude, but also just so people know, like that has not been every day for years. The part of that is every day without fail is wake up, cold shower, brush teeth, yoga, affirmations. Yeah. But only in the past couple of months have I added the water with the green juice, the coffee switch up, the smoothie around noon, bless you.
Sorry.
But I travel a lot. I fly all the time. And that's how I messed up my back is because sometimes if I have a 6 a.m. flight, I'm not going to wake up and do yoga. And I should, and I'm going to try to from now on. But I had a couple of back-to-back flights over the summer that like destroyed me because they were across country at 6 in the morning, 5 a.m. And so I'll just wake up and have to Uber there. And then I'm on a plane for 6 hours. And then I'm straight to my hotel, whatever. So it was a nightmare. So it's really hard. It's really hard. But I've built this process for the past 8 years. I've gotten to this spot, just bit by bit.
By listening to a lot of Andrew Hubermans. I think like all of that sounds amazing. I mean, I would add to, just to emphasize, because I've talked about so much of that stuff, cold therapy is one of the most important things you can do. And I know you do sauna a lot, so contrast therapy.
I do plunge. Yeah, I do contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, contrast therapy is a great way, and the morning shower is something I'm always encouraging people to do. It's really, 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 really hard, but it's something to strive for.
Yeah.
The delaying the coffee intake at least an hour or two after you wake up, that's a huge one. Obviously, limiting your caffeine intake. For me, the big one is stopping in the middle of the day. It's the coffee, the caffeine after 1, 2, 3 that really messes up sleep. And for many people, that's an issue. And I always catch people with that. Everyone has a different amount of time it takes to digest the caffeine out of their bodies. So some people can drink it later, but I really encourage, use that morning window, get your caffeine in, limit it. 120 is a lot for even most people.
Yeah, no, which is crazy. Like I didn't even realize I started doing this new one to phase out of the crazy big tumbler that I had. And then when I saw it was 120, I was like, damn, I thought this was like 40. So now I got to work my way down a little bit more. Yeah.
I love all that. We're going to run out of time, but we cannot complete this podcast without talking about psychedelic medicine.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
I think that's where we connected. So first of all, if you're interested in a really in-depth conversation, especially me talking a lot about my personal experiences and my journey with psychedelics, the Good Trip podcast with Brent Pella.
Yeah. So Good Trip is a 10-part series of conversations with 10 different people I released last year in February. You're one of the episodes. Also in the show, also in season 1 is Rick Doblin, founder of MAPS, Amber and Marcus Capone, who do a lot of great work helping veterans with PTSD get psychedelic therapy overseas. And season 2 is coming out in January. So stoked for season 2. JP Sears is on it. David Bronner, the CEO of Dr. Bronner's. Laura Dawn, who talks a lot about psychedelics and creativity. And that's one of my favorite conversations I've ever had. But yeah, dude, it's been that the podcast has been a really cool learning tool for me, in addition to an educational tool for other people. I'm glad folks have gravitated toward it.
I think one thing people should remember with psychedelics is it's something to learn about. It's a very broad topic because we're talking about dozens of substances. Obviously the big ones, psilocybin, MDMA, marijuana, ketamine, those are the ones I talk about a lot. But I mean, the list goes on. And I know in your podcast, you talk about a lot. Ibogaine,
Iboga, DMT,
Kambo.
Ayahuasca.
There's a lot.
Yeah, Kambo wouldn't be a psychedelic, but
it wouldn't be a psychedelic, but it lives
space. Yeah,
I think that's something I look to explore in 2024.
Have you ever done Kambo?
No, but
got my scars,
going to. How was that experience?
Rough. It's a rough one. Yeah. I mean, it's it's the secretion of a certain toad species from South America. I'm pretty sure. Peru. Yeah, and they burn a little. They poke you with the burnt end of a stick to create an opening for the medicine to enter, and you drink a ton of water, and the medicine purges you. And I could like freestyle some scientific data that I remember the guy telling me, but just look up combo.
Yeah, I mean,
KAMBO. I can tell you how I felt after.
How was that?
It was during a weekend-long ayahuasca ceremony, and I did it the morning of day 2. So after night 1, I woke up and we sat in a little combo ceremony, and I felt like, I purged all the water that I had drank, because part of it is drinking like a gallon of water within 10 minutes, and I felt like clean. It's not fun to throw up. It's not fun to be shaking and swollen like a toad for 45 minutes. But the end result, I felt clear, like so clear, like more clear than Tom Cruise. You know what I mean? It's a Scientology joke. Come on.
That was good.
And I felt like clear. Like I felt like I went out for a walk and the sun was a little bit brighter. My brain fog was like non-existent for like days. And I don't really have brain fog today, but at the time I was in that space. So I felt just really good.
Yeah.
Felt very clear. And what it really helped do is that second night of the ayahuasca ceremony, it helped me absorb the medicine and have a deeper experience than I did on night 1.
Right.
So there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it. And it's a whole world. And I really encourage everyone to learn more about it and listen to your podcast and not look at it as some magic bullet. It's not this like, oh, it's going to fix everything. It's just another tool in our tool chest.
Yeah.
And it's a tool that's existed for tens of thousands of years. A lot of the medicines that we talk about when it comes to psychedelic medicine are very ancient. And some of them are new, like ketamine is something that was discovered in the last, 100 years, 50 years. So think about it when you're learning about this stuff, become educated. I think like this conversation might sound very like laissez-faire, but I think it came from a lot of soul searching, a lot of knowledge, a lot of exploration into your psyche and knowing what you're doing and preparing for it. And I think that's so important because as it is becoming more popular and you have like a Netflix show about it and people are, oh, let's just do this. Oh, let me just take all these shrooms. It's not that simple. No. Everything in life has a price. And so know what you're doing before you do it. But certainly psychedelics have a huge role in this world and should.
And they always have too,
always.
And it's really important for anybody who's like starting to research that topic or, for a lot of people, the topic of psychedelics keeps crossing their path because we're in this like renaissance of psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And so folks are looking up psilocybin, like why do people talk about this? Can it really help with therapy? Can it really help with depression? Are mushrooms legal? And eventually they will be. Eventually we're going to have a MedMen, but for psilocybin. Yeah. And what's going to be really, really important is for people to understand the history of psychedelics and how we got to this space and how they were originally used in indigenous practices for wellness and community building and spiritual individual growth. And that all of those traditions and that stewardship ideally is carried into how psychedelics continue to cross into the mainstream culture today. Otherwise, we're just going to have a bunch of people like taking a bunch of acid and jumping off of buildings, like the way the government wants you to think is what happens. Yeah. But yeah, it's important, dude. Just be mindful. Psychedelics have a role in creativity. They have a role in independent spiritual growth and a lot of other fun roles.
I love your passion for it. You've obviously become so knowledgeable about it. Look, everyone, if you're going to take something from this podcast,
take acid.
But seriously, it's all the things, right? Yeah. We talked about a guy here who's working so hard to build his career and doing so much work for it, right? If you're not thinking about your morning routine, you probably shouldn't take psilocybin. You should probably start with the basics of what your day-to-day life should look like, what your food should look like, what your spiritual practice should look like. Start there and let that be your beginning and listen and learn and read. And then maybe, sitting down in ceremony and trying some of these products makes sense. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe you start doing cold showers and eating better and controlling your caffeine intake, and a lot of things get better. And that might be enough for a lot of people. So I want to leave it with that because, caution is important during the Renaissance.
Yeah.
Or we're going to have what happened before decades ago, where it got fear-mongered and bad things happened, and we lost it. They took away our freedom to use these substances. And, I think being responsible and thoughtful. Okay. On that note, Brent, how can people find out about you? He is a very, very funny guy. This was a very serious conversation.
It was. We got a lot out. This is cool.
Yeah. I had a feeling.
We jammed, dude.
I think if you find our other conversations, they're much more.
No, this was cool. I love it.
A lot more dude bros than our other conversation.
Yeah. No, we're grown dude bros now, dude.
Where can they find you? What can they do?
Yeah, Instagram at Brent Pella. New videos pretty much every day. BrentPella.com. We'll have tour dates for the spring going all across the country starting in like March. And the comedy special releases January 11th on my YouTube channel, youtube.com.
Do we have a title?
Conscious Bro.
Conscious Bro. Perfect.
Bro. You want to know more about it? You'll see. Yeah.
And on that note, thanks everyone for listening, and goodbye.
Love ya.